Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome New York State Senator Liz Krueger. Please welcome CEO of the Cannabis Principal, Osbert Orduña. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 57th Governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. I first of all want to thank the Department of Taxation and Finance for hosting us. Who's been in here before? All right, you don't have to put up your hands. That's all right. That's all right. Really glad to be here, and I want to thank our tax commissioner, Amanda Hiller, for the exceptional work she's doing. Where are you, Amanda? Okay. You can have a seat. Thank you, Commissioner, for all you're doing for us and leading this incredible organization of a lot of unsung heroes. And I'm grateful to all of them for the work they do every single day and the important role they're now playing to ensure that a brand new industry can be successful. So thank you, Commissioner Hiller. I also want to acknowledge Chris Alexander, who will be speaking momentarily, the Executive Director of the Office of Cannabis Management. And we have other key players in this effort to ensure that we have fairness for the new licensees, and that is the Acting Superintendent of the New York State Police, Steve Nigrelli. I want to thank Superintendent Nigrelli for all his work. Oh, there he's over there. We also have my partners in government. You'll be hearing shortly from Senator Liz Krueger, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and her role in making this happen and what we need to do next. I want to thank her. Let's give her a round of applause as well. Let's see who else is here. We also have our borough president has joined us. All right. Oh, there he is, Antonio. Good to see you, Antonio, for all the work you're doing. Look forward to catching up with you afterward. And you're doing an incredible job here. This is a challenging borough sometimes, and you are the person who can keep it all together in a way that's very committed to your constituents. And I thank you for your leadership as well. Also joined by a great friend of ours, our amazing district attorney, Eric Gonzalez. And I want to thank him for keeping our constituents safe, our streets safe, and helping our businesses thrive. And so an important role you play, and I've had a chance to meet members of your team, and what an extraordinarily dedicated group of individuals you have working for you. I was so impressed when I had a chance to come over. So thank you for all you do. Also joined by Senator Simcha Felder is here. Senator Felder, you're here, right down there. Senator Fernandez has joined us. Senator Fernandez has joined us here. Councilmember Marjorie Velasquez is here. Senator Velasquez. Gail Brewer here? Senator? Oh, I thought she was coming. That's right. And I think we've got everybody. If I forgot you, I apologize, and I'll try to make it up to you. Is Stephanie Zinnerman here? No, I don't see her. Okay, we have people coming. Traffic's crazy in this city now. I've been out a lot, so we'll forgive a lot of people. And Osbert Orduña, I know you're going to be hearing from him in a couple of minutes to talk about the story of his experience. And this is a veteran who has stepped up to be one of the very first, someone that we're going to look back on and say he figured it out and he was successful, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure as we're talking about cannabis, that we're doing everything we can do to ensure that the sales of legal products are happening in a way that is equitable. And that has been the ambition behind the law changes a few years ago that allowed this new industry to be unleashed. Everyone knows back in 2021, March of 2021, the legislature passed really groundbreaking legislation to allow the sale of adult use cannabis here in the state of New York. And when I took office a few months later in August, not a lot had been done. The office had not been stood up. There were not the resources behind it. And I knew that we were missing too much time. We needed to jumpstart this and get it moving again. So we put a team in place. And as we stood up this brand new industry, knowing that there'd be challenges, you look at every state that has done this, there are always some hurdles and roadblocks. But my number one objective was to get it right and to make sure we do it in an equitable way. So we launched the Seeding Opportunity Initiative, the first of its kind in the nation, something we all should be proud of. And what this does is an attempt to right the wrongs of the past. And that positions people with prior cannabis-related criminal offenses or their immediate family members to make the first sales of the adult use cannabis with products grown by our local farmers. And as I mentioned, we're proud to have one of those individuals here today, Osborne Orduña, who's the CEO of Cannabis Place, and he's the first service-disabled veteran to open a cannabis business right here in the state of New York, and I want to thank him for his past service to our country as well. You know, sometimes it takes a while to get it right, and the process has not been easy. It's not been easy. It's not on the pace we would want to see, but sometimes the things worth doing are not on an easy path. And to ensure that we have a thriving and equitable cannabis industry here, you know, we want to make sure we do everything possible to just make it a lot easier. And I want to recognize that there's a way to do this. And what has been a barrier has been the proliferation of illegal, unlicensed shops throughout the state. And they are driven by individuals who are flagrantly violating the law. They are creating competition where there should be none. And we recognize this is a serious problem for the success of this new industry. And also, we have no assurances that the products are even safe. And that is something consumers need to know, that this does not have the New York State seal of approval, that you do not know what product could possibly be laced with or have other contaminants. And that is a risk that people should not be able to take. So we're making sure that anything we sell is going to be properly tested for safety and quality, and that is absolutely not what you can guarantee with the products sold at these illegal stores. And they have been found to have toxic chemicals, E. coli, and other ingredients that you just do not want to ingest. And also, these products are being marketed to kids with the bright colors and the candy flavors. And the other side of it is, other than impact on people's health, it is denying the state of New York this tax revenue that we were anticipating that would be used or generated from legitimate dispensaries. And the reason this is so important, the way this was set up, is that 40% of the revenue goes to the Community Reinvestment Fund, which helps communities that were impacted the most by the heavy enforcement of cannabis sales in the past. So we also want to use the rest of the money for public education, safety, protect our kids. And so illegal sales aren't just unfair and unsafe, they're also unjust. And doing nothing about this was not an option. We saw the proliferation, we saw the arrogance associated with this, figuring no one's going to stop me. And for us to be able to keep centering on social and economic equity, we knew we had to take some strong steps. So we had to do it the right way. And that meant aggressively enforcing the law for those who are hiding behind their operations. And many types of businesses, as we know, require licenses to operate. Nail salons, bars, everybody's used to having licenses to operate. But before May 3rd of this year, New York State didn't even have all the tools we needed to shutter the unlicensed shops. And that was a problem. But now, thanks to our efforts in the legislature and changing the law just recently, now we have 3 more powerful tools at our disposal. First, significantly higher fines. Businesses that sell cannabis without a license are now subject to fines of $10,000 a day. They can also double to $20,000 a day if they continue to sell once a notice of violation has been affixed to their window. As you can see, we have a very nice sign on the far left. You're right. You can't miss that. And we want people to be aware of this and know that that is a warning danger sign. If you walk into those premises, you're entering an illegal facility, and there could be consequences to your own health, but also that operation is operating absolutely 100% in violation of New York state law. And the tax department can levy fines on top of that. And that is the enhancement that was so necessary, because we have dedicated public servants here at the Department of Tax and Finance who want to just do the right thing to ensure that everyone is treated fairly. There's no advantage to someone because they're able to escape the law to the detriment of those who are law-abiding. That's what the premise behind this agency is all about, and they don't get the credit they deserve. So the fines used to be considered just a cost of doing business for these operators. They didn't worry about it. They didn't think it was much of a deterrent, and they kept operating. But now, instead of just being a cost of doing business, these fines now have the power to put these shops out of business. And the second tool we've instituted now is that if a business continues to sell cannabis after they've already gotten a violation, the state can now pursue a court order and shut them down and padlock the store. Believe it or not, that was not the case before. So we've got a new process to shut down illegal operators and to keep them shut until the fines are paid. And if it continues, the Office of Cannabis Management will work with the State Attorney General's office and issue restraining orders and issues of closure. So there's different layers here now that were not in place when this industry first was born. And so this proceedings can not just be brought against the store owner, but the property itself, the building owner. So that's a warning to all the landlords out there saying, do you really want to risk this, not just your reputation, but this is going to hit you monetarily as well. That's what we didn't have. That's what we now have. So obviously this will be following a hearing, and there could be a permanent injunction padlocking the premises for up to 1 year. That ought to get their attention. That ought to get their attention. And third, the enhanced criminal penalties for business owners engaging in unlicensed cannabis sales. It was already, selling without a license is already illegal, but we focus new penalties on top of the true owner of the business, not the employee who happens to be the person behind the counter during an inspection, but the person who's the owner of the business. So we're going to be penalizing the business owners, not their customers, and not their employees. I want to be very clear on that as well. So we are trying to move forward. In addition to these tools, I've given the Office of Cannabis Management and Department of Finance and Tax. I want to be aggressive. I want to get this done. I want to send a message loud and clear across this state that if you're operating illegally, you will be caught and you will be stopped. So it is just not worth it. So we're going to work together, enforce the law quickly and aggressively, and shut these bad actors down, because too much time has passed, in my opinion. And again, I'm grateful that we got the legislature to change this. We worked together. We got it signed very quickly. And literally, we put more resources behind enforcement. Our state budget provides $5 million to hire an additional 37 full-time staff to carry out enforcement activities. That'll help as well. And we've wasted no time. So for the last 2 weeks, just since the law was signed, the state's been conducting inspections, and today I'm proud to announce the results so far, and thank you, everyone who had a role in this extraordinary effort that you've undertaken. Illegal cannabis was seized from 31 businesses in New York, Albany, Ithaca, Binghamton. I literally got phone calls and letters from elected officials and some of the upstate communities grateful that this is finally happening. And the estimated value of the seized cannabis over a 2-week period is $9 to $11 million. This tax department is still tabulating the full amount seized, but at least 1,000 pounds of product, as you can see in the photo over here. By taking that decisive action, we're cracking down on unlawful businesses that jeopardize the integrity of our cannabis market. We're building an equitable system like no other, something we all should be proud of. But let people know we have zero tolerance for the bad actors who are standing in our way of full success. And one more thing I want to highlight. I've heard from New Yorkers it's sometimes difficult to tell which cannabis businesses are legitimate and which aren't. Okay, that's your excuse. We're going to make it very clear. We'll make it really clear. I want to remind everybody it's very simple. Every legal dispensary will have a sign like this near the entrance. It's visible, it's obvious, and this is the sign. This is where you can legally buy legitimate, clean, safe cannabis. Or you could actually scan the QR code and verify that it is licensed if you have any questions. So the work continues. Much more to do. Have to make up for a lot of lost time. But we will look back and say, yes, there were growing pains. There always are. But within a fair amount of time, short time, I hope to be able to say that because of this enforcement action, the action by the legislature, and our work to get these new licenses issued and facilities stood up, that it'll be a different dynamic the next time we gather and talk about the success of this and how this can still be a national model, in my opinion, of how we focus on social equity, righting the wrongs of past, but opening up a whole new industry, a dynamic industry that'll help farmers and small businesses and people have the dream of having their own place. And also the customers who will also know that this is a legitimate and safe product for them. So I believe there's great potential here. I'm always an optimist. We're going to get it right. But if people stand in our way, if there are bad actors out there trying to thwart our efforts to do the right thing, don't bother. You will be caught. You will be stopped. And that is exactly what this launching here today is, to talk about the success of the last 2 weeks, but where we're going next. And I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this. And I want to give my gratitude to Chris Alexander for leading the charge here. It's been a tough haul. It's always tough to be the first. It's always tough to be the first, to have to go in and literally build something from the ground up. But I want to thank you and know that you have the full support of the governor of the state of New York, our entire administration, because we're all vested in the success of this brand new industry, which again, I know we're going to be proud of. So with that, let me introduce the Executive Director of the Office of Cannabis Management, Chris Alexander.
Good morning, everybody. Governor, you said it best. It is difficult being the first, but you know all about that, right? We are thankful to all of you for joining us today. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership on this issue. Thank you, members of the legislature, Liz Kruger, our champion on this issue, Amanda Hiller, Department of Tax and Finance, the investigators on the ground, all the elected officials who've supported this, but also those who in their capacity have helped us to make this a reality. DA Gonzalez, I appreciate you as well for your support on this. You know, we have now spent the last 18 months building something that has never existed before, building a market that is centered on small businesses, on small family farms, and on those who were previously impacted by past policies. This has been a challenge, to say it lightly, but what we found and continue to be encouraged by is the stories like Osbert's, the stories of entrepreneurs who have been impacted, but who didn't let that conviction become their story, did not let that interaction become their story. We have so many operators now throughout the supply chain who have found themselves impacted by a cannabis conviction, but still went out to build successful businesses, went out to start family farms, et cetera, and who are now counting on the state to make good on this promise to do something different. And we're doing that. We're doing it every day. Now, I know that for many of you who've followed me or have worked with me in the past in the advocacy world, this announcement of a law enforcement action is kind of weird, speaking about how long we've spent fighting against past policies. But I want to really emphasize the fact that this is a different moment, this is a different day, and this is a different approach. Our focus started with notice. Our focus started with communicating to these illicit operators on the consequences of their action, the impact of their desire to be non-compliant, and now that we've spent the time letting them know and warning them of continued non-compliance and continued activity, now it's time to take some action. Because we have to protect what we're building. We have to protect this project here in New York. Believe it or not, everybody is watching New York State, as we're used to being in that familiar position, but also watching what it looks like when you roll out a market that starts with those small businesses, that starts with those folks who otherwise have been left out and left behind of opportunities like these when they normally come along. So at this time, I want to really point to our investigator team, led by Dan Hackney. I want to shout out again his efforts and his leadership in this moment. This team has gone around the state. They've interacted with these illicit operators. They've communicated them. They've treated them, with respect in the warning process. And now, as they go back out, they're seizing millions of dollars worth of illicit products that really pose a significant risk to our communities. This is a public health intervention. We are proud of the safe products that we have in the legal market, the tested products that we have in the legal market. We are concerned about the products that are flowing through the illicit market and the way that those products are being advertised and marketed, particularly to children. And so, as the governor said, we are taking swift action now. We have been seizing cannabis products, illicit cannabis, for the last several months. That has not been enough of a deterrent to shut these businesses down. And so I, again, thank the legislature and the governor for giving us this additional power to take the necessary action. This is not going to be the first update that we provide on our activities. The goal right now is closing these illicit shops down and opening more legal ones. And we're going to continue to drive full speed at both of those goals. We thank you for helping to be ambassadors of this message. We have a lot of licensees in the room. If you are a card licensee, please raise your hand or stand up so you can be recognized for being here and being a part of the solution. And as I close, I just have a quick message to you all. You all have been clamoring and asking, hey, I'm getting ready to open up, but I've got 5 illicit shops down my block. How am I going to be successful in this market, in this space that you all are creating, this opportunity you've given to me? If this was any other industry, you would have taken action before. Your success, my message to you, your success is our success. We need you to be successful. And so this action is also to ensure that you have the space that you need to operate and to provide New Yorkers with a safer, tested cannabis product. So thank you, Governor, again for the opportunity, and we'll be here for questions at the end.
Please welcome to the podium, Osbert Orduña.
Hello. I'm humbled to be here before you today. I would like to begin by thanking Governor Hochul, the Office of Cannabis Management, the various elected officials that are here today, my fellow card license holders, and everyone in attendance today. My name is Osbert Orduña. I am a native New Yorker, a service-disabled veteran, and the Chief Executive Officer of a New York State licensed card dispensary and cannabis delivery service based in Queens called the Cannabis Place. I am also an advocate in the cannabis industry, working with organizations including the New York Card Coalition, the National Hispanic Cannabis Council, the Service Disabled Veterans and Cannabis Association, and the National Cannabis Industry Association in our efforts to bring an equitable change to the cannabis industry. Entrepreneurs, innovators, and advocates, some of whom are in this room today, have worked tirelessly to right the wrongs of cannabis prohibition, advocating for and supporting the creation of the state's licensed cannabis industry, its social equity opportunities, and for a safer, regulated market for consumers across the entire state. The legislative intent was clear, and the path for an equitable cannabis industry was laid. There are many regulated industries in the state, so why should cannabis be any different than those? Since legalization, there are persons who are neither legacy nor from communities that were disproportionately impacted who have launched unlicensed storefronts with the sole purpose of enriching themselves, ignoring the sacrifices that were made by our returning citizens who paid the ultimate price of prohibition, and also stepping all over and trampling the hard work of the advocates that fought to make cannabis legalization a reality in New York State. Instead, unlicensed storefront operators are undermining the hard legalization work that so many collectively fought for. Unlicensed shops and the landlords that leads to them are taking advantage of the public's lack of awareness by allowing these storefronts to masquerade as legitimate businesses while all too well knowing that they are in fact unlicensed and unregulated operations. We have all seen multiple media reports about how unlicensed operators are putting their staff and our communities at risk as a result of their illicit operations. Meanwhile, so many other New Yorkers, including card applicants, some of whom are in the room today, service-disabled veterans, women, minority, and other small business owners are choosing to do the right thing, waiting for their chance to apply for and to launch their licensed dispensary businesses. These hardworking, tax-paying, rule-following persons deserve the opportunity to not have their dreams trampled on, and our communities should not be exploited by these unlicensed and unregulated operators. Recently, I was at a community board hearing where even an elected official chose to make no distinction between unlicensed operators and those of us who are working diligently and responsibly to launch and operate in full compliance with state regulations. Let me be perfectly clear. We, as New York State licensed cannabis dispensaries, are not the same as the unlicensed illicit storefronts. You see, unlicensed operators are just about themselves, so they don't contribute to the tax revenue that should be used to fund programs to help support our schools and the implementation of statewide youth-focused public education campaigns. In fact, many unlicensed storefronts exist very close to our schools and our houses of worship because they and the landlords that lease to them just don't care. The actions of these unlicensed storefronts are directly contributing to furthering the disproportionate impact that so many of our communities face by these individuals who are instead greedily pocketing tax dollars that should be going towards reinvestment in our communities, funding positive and, in fact, impactful changes. I also want to be clear. The first time that I was personally stopped and frisked, I was 13 years old. I am not for the war on drugs 2.0. So while government entities go about enforcing regulation and seizing unlicensed cannabis products, they also need to make sure that the cannabis laws are applied evenly and fairly in all communities throughout the state. There are too many municipalities that have opted out and prevented licensed opportunities from an opportunity to be a proactive and responsible part of their community, while instead choosing to turn a blind eye to unlicensed operators. For these municipalities, you can't have it both ways. I am glad that the state and the governor are working hard to streamline and increase the transparency of the efforts to open more licensed dispensaries throughout the state, with many more on the way, and in many parts of the state, including New York City, now have licensed cannabis delivery services, providing New Yorkers with access to licensed products at their doorstep. As many card applicants and licensees, including us, have said, we appreciate and are grateful for the hard work of the OCM to build a legal, safer, regulated market for consumers and for the combined efforts of the many advocates, legislators, and our governor for bringing about an equitable example for others in the emerging cannabis industry to follow and to become the new model of what legalization should look like in this country. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Senator Liz Krueger.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm a politician, and I've run out of things to say because the three people who spoke already pretty much said everything that I wanted to hear, and I wanted to make sure everyone heard. So I won't tell you that Governor Hochul and I agree every day on everything, but I 100% agree with her here today and how important her role has been in taking up the challenge, literally the moment she got into the governor's chamber, that we needed to get this done and we needed to get it right. I spent 7 years working on legislation. I must have rewritten it 100 times. Chris Alexander happened to be a counsel in the Senate at the time who probably drafted it and redrafted it 100 times. And over those years, there were people from large industries, alcohol, tobacco, soda, who would just show up and say, just let us run it all. It'll be fine. We'll just do it all. It'll be fine. You'll make a lot of money. We're like, we're not doing this to make a lot of money, although we never minded state government making money, don't misunderstand. We were doing this to try to end the damage that prohibition had been doing for almost 100 years in communities of color to young people. That's right, that was the basis for the decision. And people always said, like, why did you get involved in this? You don't drink or smoke or use drugs. I go, I know, I'm sort of the odd character to be taking this on. But I did it because I saw the data showing that in the city of New York, under the Bloomberg administration, we were busting 50,000 young people of color every year just for having a couple of marijuana cigarettes somewhere on them. And I was like, I used a lot of marijuana when I was a teenager, frankly. I stopped when I was about 17, because I was done, but nobody ever tried to bust me. And I represent probably one of the whitest and wealthiest districts in the city of New York, and nobody was busting my kids. No parents were calling me saying, my kids are getting busted, but I knew that the young people in my district were using just as much cannabis as everybody else's kids, but they weren't getting criminal records. And so that was really the driving force for me in starting this work. And then I learned more and more about it. And so this bill, yes, it's big, it's complex. There are many issues, as Governor Hochul's pointed out, and everybody's needed to try to do that in a very short period of time. My highest respects to the entire team at OCM for the demands on them and the work that they have been doing. So no, you're not done, and you get some crap thrown at you sometimes. I do as the lead sponsor in the Senate. I see my colleague Brian Kavanaugh from Brooklyn has joined us. Hi, Brian. You weren't here before when Kathy Hochul made all the announcements. So we need to do this, not because we want to reinstall criminal penalties. We need to do this because of the explanations you've already heard from 3 excellent speakers. We have to get this right. So I'm glad that the DA's here, the borough president is here, so many other colleagues in elected office, because we need to do this together, and we need to get it right to make sure that we have the model that we claimed when we passed this bill, that it was going to be the best cannabis legalization law in this country, that we were going to be making sure we were investing in the communities where the harm was done, that we were expunging criminal records for people who got caught up in the criminal categories for cannabis, that they had opportunities to become successful entrepreneurs and taxpayers, and that we would guarantee legal and safe product to be sold, not to children, not targeting young people, but a successful model. And as I was thinking about coming here today, I was reading a little bit last night about what happened when we ended prohibition for alcohol in this country. It's a long time ago. I don't see anybody here who probably was even alive at the time. You know what? It didn't just work great the first day. It's not like everybody in the illegal alcohol business, because by the way, in case you don't know, when there was prohibition against selling alcohol in this country, people were still buying alcohol and drinking. It was just illegal, and it was controlled by organized crime. There's a lot of good business for DAs in those years. And when the country reversed itself, and New York was first out of the box for reversing that, it's not like the next day everything just became legal and easy and following the rules. There was a real struggle there to take back a legal alcohol market and get the bad guys out. And that's what we're facing right now. We need to make sure we're operating as our goals set out, that we're giving the opportunities to the people who should have them, and that we get the guys who are not in this business for the right reasons and doing some scary things. We need them to get out. So I want to thank everyone who's involved, and I want to thank Governor Hochul for her commitment to this real challenge for New York State. But as she said, we might not have everything right yet, but we're going to have a system that we can all be incredibly proud of very, very soon. So I want to thank her for her leadership, Chris Alexander, the early card members, and great presentation. Thank you. Exactly what we needed to hear. And thank you for having me today. And I think, I'm sorry, just double checking. Am I supposed to introduce Simca Felder? No, I'm not. Okay, never mind. Sorry, just see. Sorry, I was just reading the card. Thank you.